Welcome back, everybody. It's Monday night. I'm one of three of your amazing hosts. Welcome to the ComicManAndy Comic Cave and Comic Dojo. Did you watch last night's The Last of Us? Because we did. And boy, do we have a lot to say about it. Without further ado, let's reintroduce our host tonight. We've got ourselves Double O and Jackson from Bored and Annoyed. Good to see you guys. How is it going?
Oh, man, it's good to see you, man. I'm so excited to talk to you about this, and I can't wait to hear what the chat thinks as well.
Yeah, doing well. Again, excited to talk about The Last of Us, and especially with you fine gents. So
I'm so pumped because we can see more and more of The Last of Us being talked about on social media, and we get to see more and more of what people's opinions are, not just of people that played the video game, but people now that are just watching the show and not playing the video. So we get to see what side of the fence people are landing on as far as whether they like it, whether they don't like it, what kind of critiques they have. And I'm excited for a couple of members in the live chat tonight to really share their thoughts as well. But man, before we dig into the episode, what did you guys think on ratings? Where did you guys think this landed after that massive grand slam of an opener, episode 1? Where do you guys think this landed on the score charts?
Me? I will say that I don't think it dropped off at all. I love where this. I mean, the first one had to give us a lot. It was 90 minutes long. This one kept the momentum going. I think you saw a lot of great things, a lot of story explained, and I love the format of what they're doing and how they're carrying everything and bringing it to us.
I also liked it. I would give this an A- as well, like I did last week. I don't know, grading and rating is tough because like one is better than the other, but I can't give it like a B+ because I really enjoyed it. Was especially surprised by, and I'm assuming people are upset about this, but I was surprised by how much I enjoyed the changes in the lore as far as how it spreads and how the infected react and all that sort of stuff. Oh, and it was not hair. That was confirmed 100%.
Yep.
So let's correct the record. Me and Double were wrong on that.
100% not hair.
Yes. So there were aspects of it I love, but we'll get into it in greater detail, I'm sure.
Yeah, I want to say hello to Ferdbird the Nerd. Good to see him, man. Mark, Legion of Comics, what's up? Mark is just as over the moon excited about this series as a lot of us and everybody else. It's just, I love talking to Mark about the series in the chats. Solo Wookiees disagreeing, talking about lazy writing. I hope Solo Wookie follows us for the whole episode tonight so that he can interject and share his points, because he shared quite a bit with me on Instagram and in private message that I'm like, dude, I love what you're talking about. I want to talk about it more. I hope you're here for when we hit those scenes. But man, once again, the spoiler banner is going to be up. It's going to be up from here on out. If you guys have not watched the episode, please go watch the episode and catch this on the rewind and tune in next Monday. We'll be here every Monday at 9 p.m. I'm getting so tongue-tied. I'm so excited right now.
Real quick, I want to say I'm excited to hear what Solo Wookie has to say, because I thought he had good taste, but apparently that isn't the case.
Oh no, you're really poking the Wookie there. B Comics 313.
What up, B? How you doing, brother? Before we go on, Andy, how about you? What was your grade? What did you think of the episode?
I think we're at I'm keeping suit with the A- as well. But it's really interesting because I think this is a good place to start every week when we talk about it. Rotten Tomatoes doesn't grade each episode or give a rating to each episode, but the Rotten Tomatoes rating of 97 still holds. I think it was a 98 even before. I can't quite remember. But episode 1 got a 9.2. Episode 2, Infected, is showing up at a 9.4 so far, with about half the votes in. And what I found on here is I didn't dig into IMDb enough, and I think this is a great place to start every week, is they have rating by demographic. I think this is really cool to look at.
There were 9 out of 10s hitting some spots, viewer ratings, like 2 hours before the episode aired. So keep that in mind. I don't know how legitimate some of these are.
Ooh, I didn't. Where did you find that at? I didn't see that.
God, I mean the Last of Us subreddit was talking about the Last of Us hate group, the Last of Us 2 on subreddit was talking about it. So yeah, they're out there. If you look the day the episode airs, there's reviews, and like I don't think they're critic reviews. I think the Rotten Tomatoes one is solid because I'm pretty sure a lot of them got the whole season. So I would assume those are solid, but
Even
yeah, just be wary.
I definitely take that into effect. I appreciate that. I think this would be really cool to look at over time because one, it looks at age groups and it looks at the full demographics. Like we're going to see a strong female lead character build up here into some amazing storytelling from Druckmann and Marzin. So I wonder if that's going to shift kind of how people view it or not. And I'm wondering what kind of reaction people are going to have over the course of the season. As you can see here, people under 18 are loving it because it's crazy. It's a horror. It's a thriller movie. And 9.9, 9.9, 9.5. And then you can kind of see the grading drop off a little bit as the group ages, which is kind of neat. So granted, yeah, not some of it might not be 100% accurate, but I think if you go back and look at them over the course of the season, it kind of paints a picture like the rest of the legitimate votes should be outweighing those that aren't legitimate, in my opinion.
I would agree.
Episode 1 landing at a 9.2 with 38,000 votes, something like that. So it'll be interesting if we do a quick 5 or 6 minute snippet on kind of the ranking on IMDb over the course of the entire season, see how it holds up. And maybe when there's a season 2, we kind of touch back and kind of take a look and see how things are kind of aging, I guess.
This is all like user reviews, right?
Yeah. IMDb is all, you can create an account, log in and review it. So it's not critic reviews, it's all fan reviews pretty much.
Okay, so the Last of Us haters crowd are not review bombing the hell out of this to the point where it's getting hurt, I would assume.
Don't believe so.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Don't believe so. 4.5 solo Wookiees. I can't wait to hear more. Zach B, great second episode. Tacoma, good to see you, brother. Didn't vote. He said he didn't vote. And I just want to share a quick story before we get into kind of reviewing tonight's episode and kind of getting our reactions. Is I carved out time to work on a project or start a project that I've been meaning to start for some time. Went to a Michael's, a local craft store that does custom framing for an Ahsoka piece. And I think I shared the picture with you guys. Is this young lady's behind the counter? You've got awesome Captain America forearm piece. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. We're in the right hands, man. We're in a comic fan, kind of superhero fan. And here's this Ahsoka piece. And also she pulls out the tape measure, and right there on her arm is the butterfly. And as she goes to roll it, it's the full Ellie arm piece that she just got done. Still has the new skin covering that. And I wish I could have taken pictures and shared it, but I didn't want to share her personal information. But super cool interaction. Was going to get an Ahsoka piece frame, and I stumble in locally where I live to a mega ultra Last of Us fan. And we could have stood there for hours talking about that. And I simply said, hey, if you're interested, we'd love to hear from you in the chat and love to hear your critique on the reviews that we're doing, and left her our social media contact information. And it's just a really cool interaction. As this show comes to light, more and more fans are coming out, and you kind of run into them and find them.
This is where you give the address of the Michaels and the name of the person, and you tell everyone to just flood it and show up and just ruin her entire life.
Oh, no. It was really cool. I was really appreciative. Walking away from that, I felt really good meeting another fan of something that I really love. But dipping into this episode, this was 2 points higher than Surf Ninjas.
Surf Ninjas is like a 4.
Oh boy. I'm a Mac in me, huh?
Wow.
No, okay, we won't get into it. So episode opens up with, I was not anticipating this. Now I'm curious if you guys feel like this is going to be the narrative that we're going to see throughout the season. Is the first 6, 7, 8 minutes is going to be a look back.
I hope so.
I wonder if that's how they're going to deliver the Riley and Ellie and all of those segments as well.
I don't know about that, but I really like how they're going. Like, these are people who have nothing to do with the game, nothing to do with anything else. This is just an outside explanation of the virus, where the virus came from, and like actual news stories. And I love this part. I think it's so informative and like fills in so much that wouldn't really be great to watch or be part of in a game setting. But as a narrative to be able to watch on TV as a story told to me, I absolutely love it.
That scene is one of my favorites from either of the first two episodes. Not so much just like the lead up to her going and looking at the fungus and everything, but the military guy in Jakarta sitting her down, like, what are we supposed to do about this? And she just basically is like, you just need to bomb this entire city. That was fantastic. Yes, this scene. Yeah. This was like really well done. It was great.
Shaking, like she's just she knows the reality, she knows the truth of what's happening because she's an expert on whatever the title of her. She's the foremost expert of basically fungus in the country, and she knows. So she knows the only result, the only way to handle this is to bomb the place. And please, can I go back home to my family because I want to spend my last living moments with my family.
I also think this is really like a great thing to put in here, and I'm wondering how they're going to go about it, because the whole idea, right, is that the Fireflies think of Ellie as some sort of like hope for the human race in the form of a cure or whatever, a vaccine. But I'm assuming everyone in this world has basically been living under the assumption that this cannot be cured, because the first episode began with the guy basically saying there's no vaccine for this. If this happens, we're done. This woman is saying the same thing. So I'll be interested to see how they play with the idea of them basically setting up this entire series by saying, look, it's hopeless. There's no cure whatsoever. And Ellie being, you know, I mean, they openly talked about it, right? Like, we can take her here and possibly get a cure or whatever. And Joel's like, we've heard this before, blah, blah, blah. So I'm very curious to see where they go with that. Extremely curious to see how they work it into what happens at the end of this and the catalyst for the story of the second game, which we won't get into right now. But anyone who's played them both kind of probably can see where I'm going with this.
Right. And the other part is like, this is like the theme of the episode too. Like, she talks about like you have to bomb it. That's the only thing to do. And then as we'll see later in the episode, like, they actually listened. I mean, that was what they did. That's what they did all over the place, was to try to contain it. We can talk about it when we get to that spot, but that's actually what happened.
Yeah, and they were just
the only solution. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was really interesting how they started this off, and they pick her up from lunch, no explanation, whisk her away in the car, and present to her the subject that was infected. And this was one of the first. So I was not anticipating the scene that we got in that laboratory. I'll say that much. I was kind of caught off guard by that. Number one. Number two, when she kind of cuts into that ankle area, and then there's the cordyceps right underneath, and it starts to really sink in. And then when she rips the cordyceps virus from out of her mouth, not virus, but fungus out of her mouth, then it's like she's immediately done. The reason why that some people aren't quite, let me rephrase that. I don't know. The reason why I felt as much fear and terror as I did is that at this point we know that there is no vaccine. You don't create vaccines for funguses. You don't create cures for funguses, really. You manage funguses. There's like, you know, foot fungus, you got sports creams and all this other stuff. But what they're talking about here is this is adapted and elevated, and what do you call it? It's changed over the course of history to the point of it's able to incubate in a higher temperature, in the body temperature, and live, which is why funguses die within the human body, is they can't live in those temperatures. But then when it gets to this temperature, that's why she's panicking and freaking out, because she spent her lifetime researching these topics and these fungi, if you will, and she knows that there's nothing that can stop this, nothing known at this time, and that's when she moves into the bomb everything.
Right.
Which is what the scientists in the first episode said as well.
Yep.
They said that it can't survive in humans. It's impossible. And then the other guy was like, well, are you sure? And then this lady is now saying that this is what's happened. And now she discovers this fungus inside the person.
Yeah. Basically, oh God, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, no, I thought it really like hammered home the hopelessness of it all. By the way, can we talk about how unsettling and creepy that damn fungus is?
Yeah.
Like we've all seen zombies before, right? Like, you know, at this point they're more cool than they are scary to anybody. And I, you know, I'm a body horror fan, you know, like David Cronenberg movies, that kind of shit. This gave me the willies more than a lot of that stuff does. It's not like frightening, like you're afraid for the character dying or whatever, but it's just unsettling and gross and disturbing. And I think it's fantastic, to be honest. I love it.
Yeah, this is why when we first started talking, like, these are not zombies. This is a whole different class of infected, you know, so it's like there's not a virus inside of them. This is actual growth of an organism that's taking over its body.
They're still zombies.
Yeah. Yeah. Harold, to Harold's question here, confirm the cordyceps was spread via flour. If I remember correctly, one of the follow-up portions from episode 1 was a you guys correct me if we talked about this or we found it somewhere else, but if I remember correctly, back in history over in not Europe, but the Asian Pacific area, they had something happen that grew in flour, and it was a mold / fungus that actually made some people go insane. You got to look it up. We got to dig into that and look that up. But I can't remember if it was like a post-credit kind of Last of Us thing that they talked about it a little bit, but I remember it being factual in history within the last 100 years. And that's why Druckmann and Marsden chose Jakarta, because of the heat and because it's the largest worldwide flour processing plant anywhere. That's where my wife, being the kind of the scientist she was, she's like, I don't believe that. We would never eat flour from Jakarta. I'm like, we might not right now, but maybe 40, 50, 60 years from now, as the world supplies change and shift about what's being grown where and how things work, that's a possibility. But that's where they think the cordyceps evolved to the point where it could live and strive in the heat. And that's why they're talking about it in the flour factory, because flour can sit there on the floor and get moldy. And what they were doing is this kind of like mini history lesson that I was watching or listening is flour's getting left on the floor. And because the factory director or producer was so cheap, they would pick up all the scraps from the floor, throw it in, bake it into these breads and these other goods. And people were eating them and getting sick, like really sick, to the point where I think 12 or 13 people got jail time, like serious jail time over there. Like,
maybe to your wife's point, Andy, maybe it wasn't like a single outbreak point in Jakarta. Maybe the flour across the world was in such a condition now with global warming or whatever they're trying to say caused this, where it could spawn up anywhere.
True. That's a fair point. I was
going to say, though, I didn't know my Wonder Bread was coming from Jakarta. My biscuits and gravy I had for breakfast this weekend, I wasn't thinking that was from Jakarta. So I'm kind of with her on that.
That's fair.
You know, they had biscuits in the first episode. Now
Right. That was my first thought, was like, yeah, because they made a point of like Joel turning down the biscuits. And I think they're trying to say like, oh, they dodged a bullet. I think that was the idea. So I do think they're trying to say like it came from Jakarta. Like, well, I mean, it could have been like the old woman was already sick, so the biscuits probably didn't give her the. Well, was she?
She went to the hospital. Remember?
Right, but like, did they confirm she was ill when they were feeding her the biscuits outside?
That was their theory. Like it was just a theory, because she didn't look like she was infected when she was getting fed the biscuits.
Right. Yeah, so maybe that infected her.
She got infected by the biscuits,
By the biscuits, yeah.
which had flour from Jakarta. Because they talked about Jakarta in the first episode as well on the radio.
They did, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
was like near the opening of the.
Yep.
Again.
The other running theory is that she caught it at the hospital from somebody else that was sick
Right.
with it. Because I guess they had talked about her going to the hospital earlier. Legion of Comics, we actually talked about that a little bit. It was my kind of running theory now is they're going to open every episode with a 6 to 8 minute kind of flashback to something else. That's kind of where I think they're going. I'm going to do my best to stay up with the chat as we continue to deep dive into this.
I'm intrigued by this whole biscuit theory right now.
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be some more about that on Reddit because I feel like a lot of other people were talking about it.
Interesting.
Speaking of Solo Wookiee's comment, the cinematography is on point. When we break from all of that and get back to our three main characters after spending a night in a building, this is an incredible shot here.
Yeah, the sets, like the indoor sets especially. I mean, outdoors they're probably pulling a lot of trickery. Those look great, obviously, but like the indoor sets are neat. With all the foliage, it almost looks like she's in a bed of fungus here. Was what I was thinking as this scene was happening. But yeah, all the stuff, like the production quality on this show is awesome so far. I think.
Good.
Only eat flour from Jakarta. This is also us as viewers the first time we see Joel and Tess interacting with her as if she was going to turn, like the next morning. Like, are you going to turn? You haven't turned. Like, they treat her pretty. They definitely keep her at arm's length, waiting to see what happens and trying to figure out why she hasn't turned.
And when she wakes up right here, just a little thing that I did notice a butterfly that was in this scene, like that flew across her.
She was bit in the mill, Wookiee, but that could have been from someone else or was from someone else who works there, supposedly or assumedly. So the outbreak could have still come from the mill.
The flour, the mill itself,
right.
Yeah. Because they talked about she was bitten, and where are the 14 other missing factory workers? They only got the 3 that she attacked. The one before was never found, and there's 14 others missing, leading her to say bomb everything. Yeah, the cinematography is on point. Let's see if I can kind of dip out and find grab the next screener area. And this is where I'm really interested to hear your guys' take, and everybody in the chat that's played the video game. This is where we kind of get a little bit of a different trail, so to speak. Like, the video game does a deep dive into going into the nooks and crannies and trying to get through the underground subway system, get through the big office buildings. Like, for us that have played the video game, our first introduction to the clickers and to the runners was that slanted office building that we thought we were heading for at the end of episode 1.
You mean, the when they go up the building and then come down the building? Yeah. So, I mean, they kind of do it a little bit, but not to the extent of in the game. And I don't think that really would have made for very compelling television. I mean, I guess that's the only really thing that I could think of, because that takes a long time. And then, like, there's parts in there that are amazing in the game that introduce us to some of the enemies. But I don't think, like, going through all of that at the pace that it did in the game would make sense for us to watch on TV.
Unless you want to be bored out of your mind.
Which I don't think they were going for at the show.
Right. Yes.
They'll leave that for the football game yesterday.
I think that's definitely fair to say. I still feel like there were portions of the game that were so terrifying. I felt like they were a for sure shot going to happen in the show. Like the underground subway, like lobby area, not like once you get all the way through the subway and you get all the way to the very end where you're climbing out of the subway, there's that lobby with, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 clickers, depending on how hard or how difficult the game is. And you've got to navigate that whole area silently and try to take everything out. That was terrifying, like blood curdling, palms and feet sweating, terrifying playing the game. Yep. So I thought they were going to go that route in the show, at least kind of introduce that and try to go into the building, then go into the subway, and then kind of get to where they were going for the state house. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't in the game they call it the Capitol, or did they call it the state house in the game as well?
No, it's the Capitol. It was the Capitol.
Yeah, I don't remember.
And I believe they're calling it the state house in the show.
Yeah, the Gold Dome, like that's like the Boston.
Yep.
It's a real building in Boston, I believe.
I mean,
yeah,
that doesn't matter.
Yeah,
though.
I don't think that's a big deal.
They conveniently have a building down here. So this is an important part to bring up too for everybody that's watching that's kind of working to put the timelines together a little bit. Right here at this junction, if it wasn't for that building, I remember Tess saying it would have been a 10-minute walk.
Yep.
That's an important thing to note that my wife and I talked about later, is based on the timing. I had some questions from people in comments or in private chats about the timing of things, and I'm like, well, if you think about it, it was only going to be a 10-minute walk if that building wasn't there, and then they've got the long route and the short route to take, which they labeled with different difficulties.
Yeah.
Very video game-esque,
Yeah,
might I add?
Yeah.
but well played. We even get a dining room scene. This is hard to navigate. It's a little easier to navigate because it's only an hour episode, but that hour and a half episode last week was hard to find.
But this is right where we see sorry to interrupt you, Andy. This is where you first see when they're walking here. Isn't this where you see the bombed out area and they discuss what they bombed and why they?
Yeah.
So Tess explains, hey, they had to bomb everything because that was the only way to contain the infected. So it kind of ties back to the beginning of that lady like giving them. So they actually too late, but they eventually tried to go that route. So most cities, she explained that most cities look like that, and that's what you're going to find when you go anywhere.
Yep, and literally that's why we got to see that whole area around the QZ in the first episode completely wiped out. So the fact that they're seeing a couple of errant bomb craters here on the outskirts of where the bombing was kind of makes sense.
Yeah, well, she even made a point of saying that like it worked well in Boston and it didn't work as well in other places, which I thought was interesting too. It's like, oh, we're leaving Boston right now, and you're telling me this is like, better than it is elsewhere. More places are more run over by zombified infected humans than this. So I thought that was kind of cool.
And I like Harold's comment here. They don't quite understand why Ellie's special yet, because we're on that. Those of us that played the video game have been there, but now we're kind of reliving it on screen, and we got to kind of remember that a bit. Problem 1, foliage in the sun, perfect, but no foliage in the dark area where they have monsters and foliage right next to it. Fail. Interesting.
Who cares? We're talking about a show about zombified humans being infected by fungus and using mouth tendrils to infect other people. That is the least of quality criticism, Solo Wookiee. That's the first time I'm coming after you on this.
But to Solo Wookiee's point, not to his point, but to actually debate him a little bit, we get to see the hotel. I'm glad they brought that from the game over. Slightly changed, granted, but look how dark the hotel is, and look at how much foliage is taken over in the hotel.
This set is awesome. That's all we need to care about.
So well done. So many little details that they brought over. I mean, like the desk. Some of that seemed like word for word from the game. When she walks up to the desk and tries to check into the hotel and has her little conversation with the guy. Like it's like, I don't know if it was exactly word for word, but it was. I mean, it was close if it wasn't. I mean, it was awesome. And then you had the little cart, the bellboy cart there, and the piano. There was like a little frog or something playing the piano for a minute.
Yeah, hopping around on the piano.
Yeah, hopping on the piano, and all the piano was in the game too. But pretty. I really liked this scene. I liked the way it looked. I liked everything, and she had to throw in that she can't swim.
Well, and she acted like a kid in this scene for the first time, really. So that was fun too. It's like, oh, that innocence is still in there.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. This was a fantastic adventure and a fantastic set. They took one of my favorite parts of the game, that hotel. And Double O, you remember the basement where you have to start up the generator? That was a terrifying. And they kept it scary enough to keep you on your seat and keep you guessing. But I like the fact that they're making some subtle changes away from the video game to the show is, as a Last of Us fan, is keeping me on my toes.
Yep.
Really kind of keeping me on my toes. And they cut out a lot of the stuff, like Jackson said, the gameplay, the stuff that would be boring. But there's one thing that they added to this that I think added an aura, like a just the words escape me for the moment, but near the
an
end,
an air,
yeah. Of it's so tough to get this without. I don't want to let it roll and play because it's just going to be a right here. The very end of the hotel where it's blocked off, and Tess, they jam her up top to go scout ahead, and I immediately went, "Oh, is Tess going to bite it here?" Because they talked about making changes. How much changes are they going to make? So I immediately started fearing for Tess's life, because what are they going to change, and how drastically are they going to change it? Is she going to get squashed here because the building was unsteady to begin with, or it
Which
has
goes
been
right
unsteady.
to your point of being on edge, even though you played the games.
Yeah,
which 100% goes to that point. So because you don't know what's going to happen.
I think they're doing a masterful job at not changing too much, but changing just enough to keep the people that are deep in the lore on their toes. And let me get to we're kind of moving a little bit quickly because I want to get to some of the comments. I don't want to miss out on the people in the chat that are here. This was I jumped over it. Was one of the other changes that they made. Is now in the game you can only go one direction. You can't make a choice of left versus right. But then they added this. They added that scene where the long route to the state house was going to be going down this boulevard, so to speak. And they added this, and they talked about how, well, they must have been hidden inside for longer, and then more people trying to get to the QZ helped draw them out. But this is where we get to see the beginning of, quote unquote, the hive mind of the fungus.
One of the biggest changes that they talk about that's happened from the game, like all of these infected people, like they talked about the hive mind, they talked about basically they're all connected. Something happens in one spot, somebody else hears it, kind of thing, basically like Borg style. And so that's, so I'm watching this and I'm thinking why would they do that? But it makes sense here because we learned early on that there wasn't going to be spores. So you can't have spores. There's no danger from the spores, but now you have danger from touching some fungus on the ground or some random growth of fungus, because if you alert it in one spot, it's coming after you somewhere else from somewhere else, and that takes the place of the spore part. And it kind of makes sense not to have the spores. So basically what's his name would have to wear a mask the whole time like he does in Mandalorian, and they don't want to copy off that show all the time, right? So he can't wear a mask the whole time, so it makes sense for him to be able to see their faces.
I could even see them, spores or no spores, like any form of wearing a gas mask in this for Pedro Pascal, I could see being at this point in his career something that they would deter away from, because they want his face on the screen more so than less. But this is more terrifying to me than the spores were in the game, where you entered a spore thing, because in the game you threw your gas mask on and you're good. This is like tiptoeing through a minefield that never stops anywhere.
So two things. One thing the creator said about the spores that actually made a lot of sense to me is in a game, you can basically, as a player of a character and it being an element of the game, you can kind of get your head around oh, no gas mask needed here, but as soon as we enter this little cubby hole, we have to put our gas masks on. We're completely safe here. That's not necessarily going to work for TV. People would kind of be well, wait a minute, that's stupid. It doesn't make sense. Second thing about the spores, I know this is the spores as an element in the game, and this is kind of a game review or critique for me here. They didn't do shit with the spores anyway. You went into a building, there were spores, your character put the gas mask on, you did all the same shit you do outside of the building, and then when you got out, your character automatically took the gas mask off. There's this attachment to these spores, and I don't from people who played the game, and I don't personally understand it. This is way cooler to me.
I think
this is creepy as hell. it plays into the whole body horror. I mean, we'll get to the final scene, right? But yeah, I think this is a positive deviation from the game.
I would agree with that. They leaned more heavily on the spores in the second game, where you actually use them as a player. You actually use those as a weapon against some of your enemies, which was interesting. But yeah, for this to be like a hive mind, and this is like really important deviation change to talk about, or not even. This is like really important factoid from episode 2 to keep in mind, was that kind of change with the hive mind instead of the spores, kind of that diversion. But let me get caught up on some of the chat here. Yeah, Harold's still sticking it with us for a bit. At least potty mouth in this scene. That was really good. Walk through the water, might as well be a virgin on Friday the 13th. That's a hell no. Cosmic One's a hotel manager. Really enjoyed the hotel scene. That's awesome. Very cool. I do kind of miss the safe cracking, though. That comes to mind from the hotel in the first game, is getting into the safe and getting some supplies. It might be kind of cool if they at least find one safe and stumble on it through the first season. How does the door lock still work? It's electric. I got to think about what door that was. Because I had kind of a complaint too in the hotel about how all the hotel doors were kind of locked, but then I realized it's not necessarily that they're locked. They're all barricaded. Every door should be barricaded. What's up, Shattered Glass? Love the way they wiggle in sunlight. Did anyone notice that? Yeah. The tendrils or the fungi hit sunlight and start to wriggle and get activated more by the sunlight, almost like they're a little more dormant in the darkness.
That was awesome. Yes. Love that.
And yeah, the detailed and on point writing, directing, awesome detail. Harold, yeah, Pedro has a no mask clause in his contracts now.
I don't know if that's true, but that's great if it is.
And lots of fire, absolutely lots of fire. Solo Wookie earlier said that was the vaccine for this whole thing, was just straight fire. The showrunners pointed out how that works fine for a game, but completely unbelievable for real life. Yep. Game creator agreed with that. And I think a lot of us are all in the same kind of bandwagon and agreeing with that. I like how they explained it's a living thing underground. Yeah, because fungus is a living thing underground. It does connect, like they talked about. 200 feet and bigger underneath our Earth's surface. Yeah, they're adding a lot of scientific facts to this, which makes it more terrifying, in my opinion. Spores are true to how cordyceps actually spreads in the real world. I do remember hearing about that in one of the behind the scenes of creation of the games. The cordyceps transfer gags a lot of people, because we're getting that. Mom, good to see you. Thanks for being here. I hope you're watching and enjoying the show as well. Door lock in the hotel is electric. When they
might not be the deadbolts, though, if they got the deadbolts on.
But if you realize how old Boston is, a lot of buildings, a lot of hotels aren't even updated. Well, I mean,
yeah, they probably are.
But
again, who cares?
Yeah,
the show isn't about that. It's about the characters, the setting. None of that. Like, if you do that with every TV series, you're going to have a miserable life, because they're all like that, like dwelling on the stuff that doesn't really matter. Like, if a character's actions, there is an argument when we get to the end that I think is valid. I don't necessarily agree with it or care myself, but there is one thing that happens towards the end that I could see complaints over. But like stuff like this, I mean, there's going to be shit like this in every episode. Like, you just got to get over it, you know?
I would agree. It's like, how much do you want to invest in the details? And we're going to get to a point where Solo Wookie's going to be heavily invested in the details. I'm looking forward to talking about that. Speaking of the set design from our buddy Shattered, this was an incredible take on the museum. It looks absolutely phenomenal on the outside.
So yeah, and I love how he like had to go up to the fungus and make sure it was dried up and dead. Like, hey, you know, if it's old and rotten and dead, it's not recent or whatever. Like, that's their way. It's good world building there. Like, oh, this fungus is juicy and fresh. There's probably a lot of nasty shit in there. Whereas if you see and it's crackling away and dried up and dead, then you might be more safe.
Well, right? It adds a lot of credibility to that communication, that hive mind thing too. As they're leading up to this building and they're seeing it all dried out, they're getting a little bit of sigh of relief, because the last time they took this short route, it was heavily infested, and like I'm gathering that they almost didn't make it out just based on their reactions. But it looks like a giant cross between a cat's hairball and a turd, and it looks terrible, and it looks incredibly great on screen there, terrifyingly good.
Yeah, I pick those up in my living room every day, Andy. Cat hairballs.
Oh, that's terrible.
Look like that. It does look like that.
It's terrible. So I wonder if that's where they got the idea: dryer lit and cat hairballs. And then one of the scenes that we got. Oh yeah, we got to talk about this guy. We got to spend a little bit of time talking about this guy and how this came to fruition. Is like they didn't explain it very much, but as you can see, a lot of the damage that he's incurred is not anything like we've seen so far.
Right. And similar to the game, you see a victim like this before you encounter anything of what caused it. I think this was really good. You see this, but look around him. That's like all the dead fungus is around him, but he's got fresh wounds on him.
So was he coming from the opposite direction trying to get out, and was he attacked and just barely made it to his escape point there?
Well, Tess is hoping that he came in from the outside.
Yep, that's what Tess was hoping. Yeah, that he had been attacked outside and crawled his way in there and died. And obviously he's lost a ton of blood, but this is recent, within 12 to 18 hours. There's no fungus growth, there's no nothing that you can see anywhere. So that leads me to ask the question, did a human kill him? A non-infected human kill him?
No, I think they were setting up that there's going to be a new monster that we haven't seen yet, was my thought on that.
Okay, that's fair. I got to ask that question because, I mean, it's not much do I remember from the game about slashing or cutting, or like these look like nail slashes or something, because the I can't think of the name. It's frozen. My head is frozen all of a sudden. Let me just kind of get to the screen work.
Well, they say essentially, like, you know, they talk a lot about ripping people apart. And when I look at that guy, I mean, you can take that literally as in like ripping limbs off of a person's body. But I would say that guy was ripped apart.
Oh, the echolocation guys. Why? I just watched this tonight.
What are
they called again? Huh?
Clickers?
The clickers. Yeah. Like, I don't remember anything about the clickers doing any slicing or dicing or shredding, but obviously then we cut to this scene where we can tell that the place was heavily infested and they're all burned out. So either, how did they get to this point? It's somebody, there's not a lot of fire damage around the building or anything like that. They're all just kind of like dried up.
Are they burned out, or are they covered in like dead, rotten, dried up fungus here?
I think the fungus has died, like due to maybe lack of moisture, like, you know, like unable to survive wherever they are. It's been closed off. I don't know, but that's what I'm guessing. You know, just really quick before we go further, on the way to this area, Ellie mentions there are monsters that are like communicate like bats or move around like bats. And then she also talks about huge monsters that shoot spores at you. So she kind of foreshadows some things coming into this whole area.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. Not enough resources. Fungus mutates, and maybe this fungus just died. Not enough light, not enough water, something. It just died out. Did they say how long it takes to spore out? Well, the only thing we have to go by so far is that guide at the beginning of the first episode that says like a leg bite was like 2 or 3 days, an arm bite was like 1 to 2 days, and then like a neck bite, head bite was like hours, like 4 to 8 hours.
Right.
So for the turning, I don't know about the sporing out kind of thing. Oh, you're muted, Jackson.
Sorry. Now I'm a mic noob, but I was going to say, I'm going to feel like a Last of Us noob here. But correct me if I'm wrong. Once you're dead, they can't take you over, correct?
I think that's one of the things that we're going to see as we talk about a little bit more, we get further into the scenes here. That's different, is not really different, but I think that once you're dead, it can still take you over. It could still utilize your resources, your bodily resources. If it's kind of like that adage of if you damage the old zombie adage of you damage the brain, the zombie's done, even though the body's been dead this whole time. I think that's why at the very beginning, when we see the one person on the autopsy table with the doctor, that bullet wound to the head, it never finished turning,
Right.
but the
Okay.
fungus didn't stop growing or living.
Yeah, no, the fungus can live inside you, but it can't control you unless you're alive, right?
Right,
Like,
and
you
that's 'cause
can't be a zombie unless you're alive. So that guy who's dead in the lobby of the museum with the cuts all over him, like he's not going to transform if he's dead. So whatever got him killed him. It didn't bite him and take him over.
That's a great question, because I was panicking at the very beginning with the girl on the autopsy table until I saw the bullet wound to the head. I'm like, okay, she is definitely not going to bite this doctor's fingers. She's jamming him in there. But that guy, his brain and brainstem still appear to be intact. He's not.
Well, that would mean that Tess can come back as a zombie because her brain is still intact.
Okay, that's
theoretically.
It's a great debate to dig into deeper as we continue going, because
I think if you're dead, you're done.
I agree with that. I agree with that until they show us otherwise.
Right.
I don't think that's that. I think what you said is true. Yeah.
And oh boy, we've got to start talking about this before we get too much further. We're 46 minutes in, and just the set design is absolutely astonishing.
Yeah, this is the scene of the show, right? As far as like, for especially like the game playing nerds that they needed to nail this for. The introduction of the clickers was so perfect in my estimation. The only thing they didn't do, which I'm assuming they will do, and it was funny because I was watching this with my wife who didn't play the game, and she's like, couldn't they like throw something and distract them? I'm like, that's what the brilliance of the game design is, because that's a huge element of the game. You always have a brick or a bottle or something that you can throw across the room and distract them. So I was waiting for that. It didn't happen, but they're saving that, I'm sure, for down the road. Did they do that, Andy? Did I miss it?
We'll get there in just a second here, but that introduction to the clicker, like you talked about, was
so good.
This was part of all of the trailers and part of the information drop for so long that people got to see was that scene. More importantly, what they added to this that made it even more freaky and terrifying was that they were perfectly fine until Ellie gasps. Ellie, just her breath shudders, like her body, just that muscle tension shudder, and bam, it turns right there in front of him. And Joel does the best he can to get that rifle up on point, but he's popping off body shots, which I wasn't expecting at first too, which leads more to the when you're dead kind of thing. And it isn't just, they're trying to stay away from the old school zombie adage of just headshots. You know what I mean?
Well, these also have this thing armor, right? So don't shoot its head. I did love that too, because I felt like they did a really good job of like recreating how you feel in the game, because it's like you don't hit every shot in this game. Right. It's not a precision shooter, in my opinion. It's not supposed to be. Like, you're always feeling like, oh shit, like I can't get the damn thing in time. And they nailed it. Like, it was so tense. The creatures looked fantastic. The way they sounded was perfect. The whole setup and payoff of that clicker scene was out of this world. Fantastic. I loved it. And like, I would imagine that people that didn't play the game loved it too. It was so well done. It was so cool to see it.
Just the look of fear and terror on Bella's face as she's diving underneath there. This was a very cool cut shot or scene from this avenue where Joel and Tess do get split up, but then this adds Ellie getting split up from Tess, and just the look of terror in her face is frightening.
So I normally I watch this with my wife, and she actually is out of town, so she hasn't seen this yet. So I watched this by myself last night, and I caught myself during this scene like holding my breath, because not wanting to make a sound myself. Like I felt like when I was playing the game, like you have to be so quiet, sneaking around, trying not to let them hear you. And I totally like felt that, like that's what the feeling that I had while while watching this. Like, just wanted to be so quiet. Like, I didn't make a sound. Like watching this thing. So like, I think they did a fantastic job with this.
Yeah.
Amazing. It was amazing. I loved it so much.
The gunplay mechanics that plague every Naughty Dog game, phenomenal.
To be fair, if it had really good gunplay mechanics and you could just hit every shot, like I feel like the game would lose a lot of its luster. It's more frustrating in the second game when there's like waves of human enemies with guns and they're just like annoying as hell. But
oh god,
to be fair, it does like work to the game's benefit in a way because you're so tense playing it. Like you just like missing shots is part of the experience, in my opinion.
And I'm with Solo Wookie. I don't blame Ellie. You can see Bella Ramsey did a fantastic job portraying that fight or flight mechanic that is automated in your brains when you are presented with a fight or flight scenario. That adrenaline builds to the point where your body either decides to fight or to fly. And that was her body's reaction to that adrenaline, was that gasp that set out everything off. Now here we are to this scene that everybody's wondering why they just didn't throw something and make a distraction. And kind of, I think if they did that, it would have played off too much like the game. But do you remember this? Do you remember him knocking over this, Jackson? Yep. That's how he diverted the clicker that was
great.
Chasing.
I just wanted a brick or a beer bottle, man.
I don't disagree with that, but just seeing him push that over and knock that glass out was enough of a sharp-pitched, loud noise for him to quietly step off to the side, because as they talked about, it uses echolocation. So that sound is going to take over that area, and it's going to hone in on that. And if all he has to do is move out of that line of sight, like granted, they don't have sight, but echolocation is directionally focused. So if they're traveling in the direction he's standing there, even if he doesn't make a sound, their echolocation would still pick up him standing there technically. So he's just diverting himself. They did a really masterful job at adding that kind of throwing something out of the way and diverting them without making it look too much like the game, in my opinion.
They're going to do it though.
Yeah,
it's happening.
They're going to have to. But I'm glad that they didn't do it at the very beginning, at the very
don't blow your whole load in the first like game relevant scene, or since the opening was obviously game relevant, but this was like the mechanics of a video game being done on screen with so much love and so perfectly that it was just like for people who have been waiting for video game adaptations to nail it for so long, they nailed this. Like it was so good. It was so good. Like Resident Evil, take notes, your movies suck. This is like what you need to do.
Yeah, and I apologize if we run a little long tonight, guys. If you got to dip, by all means dip. I think we're going to end up going an extra 15, 20 minutes is where we're at trying to cut through this, because there's a lot to kind of dig into right here. Like this scene as he turns the corner, more importantly, he diverted that clicker out of the way and stepped off because he had no rounds left in his revolver. He is ever so eloquently trying to silently reload, and that's, oh my God, they finally did like a realistic reload on screen when somebody's out of ammo and made it believable instead of just like 10 shots, 20 shots. When's this guy get a reload? No, he was running because he was out of ammo and did that diversion specifically to reload his revolver. But
now by the next episode, he better have no ammo and be searching through kitchen drawers to find ammo. That would be that would be fantastic. Yeah. Yes.
That's a fair point.
I know, but it's great. I mean, I'm assuming that they are clearly being very true to the game. I mean, we're changing the way the virus works. Well, we're changing a big thing that happens at the end of this episode as far as how it happens. But in general, you cannot say they are not being faithful to the source material, and they're like scratching the itch of gamers. I guarantee you he's going to be low on ammo. He's not going through this entire game with full clips of ammo.
Well, we have to remind ourselves, and we have to also educate people that didn't play the game, that these are smugglers. These aren't fighters. These aren't militia personnel. These aren't military personnel. They're smugglers, meaning they don't carry a lot. They stay stealthy. They stay quick. They don't. They scavenge what they need when they're out. So it just makes sense that he's not going to have a bunch of magazines. He's not going to have a bunch of piled up military surplus items, because he would have to drag that with him everywhere. He would have caches or stashes, much like when they talk about Frank and they talk about some of that stuff that's going to be coming up soon here too. But without like spending a whole nother 20 minutes just on the museum, I think we're all in agreement they did a masterful job of recreating that.
One more thing about that. Sorry, and then we can move on. I brought up the Resident Evil movies, right? Like a huge element of Resident Evil is you're always low on ammo. You never have as much ammo as you need to comfortably get from place to place. Same with The Last of Us, right? That element is there in The Last of Us as well. The Resident Evil movies are literally like machine gun action movies where everybody has all the ammo in the world all the time. It's stupid as hell. They totally don't understand the source material. They don't know what they're making. They have no love for it whatsoever. That's true to the actual source material. This is the exact opposite, and I'm totally here for it. It's awesome. Love it.
Dr. Ruckman, I'm glad he's involved.
I would have been really worried if he wasn't.
Right.
Marsden's a killer guy, director, producer. But then speaking of kind of tugging at the heartstrings of video game players, we get this scene on the top floor of the museum as they exit, and that's the boards. The first game and the second game were really good about not really creating puzzles or barriers so much as they provided you the tools you needed. It was just really interesting to go rooftop hopping in a lot of scenarios and using whatever was at your disposal. So you get to see that here, but also we got to add a little credit or pay a little credit to Ellie getting injured / bitten / we don't know that bite area on her arm has fresh blood on it now and what looks like 2 or 3 little teeth holes or something. And she talks about, well, if it's going to happen to any of us, it's better that it happened to me because she's immune. And she downplays it a bit and goes about her way. And then the comment of careful about that over there. She's like, I need to be careful in there. This is just wood. It just waltzes right across like nothing's happening.
Another thing you might do as a kid that you would think twice about as an adult.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh. Oh, and then speaking of thinking twice, kid versus adult, like when they're climbing the stairs at the hotel earlier and they climb 10 flights and she's like, oh, that wasn't a big deal. And Tess is like, yeah, you tried doing that with our 40-year-old knees or something like that.
Yep.
I'm like, that was pretty good.
That was also this walking across the board right there, scene for scene from the game. Like, almost exactly.
Yeah, it was great.
It was perfect.
Speaking of
this
scenes,
too.
Yep.
Yeah.
We get this as well.
Yeah.
I love how they actually blur it out a little bit and make it look like it's further away off in the distance like they do in the video games. The reality of it is they had to take a different diversion, a different route, but they were a 10-minute walk away to begin with earlier. So they've had to come all the way out of their way this way to at least get to that point.
Right.
What do we want to touch bases on next?
Does it meet your expectations? And the jury is still out on that one. But you can't argue with, or I can't remember her exact words, but like, you got to love the view though when they're standing right there on the canal.
Yeah. And I like the comment that Tess makes, like, can't you just have some like positive, I forget what she actually says to Pedro Pascal, but she's like, basically like, take the win, dude. Like there's something to be hopeful for and hang on to here,
Take that W and move on because well, we won't say much more until we get to that point, just depending on who's watching here. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. It is my first complaint. I knew she, there it is right there. So we don't even have to bring it up. Solo Wookie knew she was bit right there. Her acting was on point, but I could see it. And that was kind of that portion right there that we talked about. She wanted him to take the win and move on because she was going to have to deliver him an L soon. She was off scene for 2 minutes with the clicker, no sound, no struggle. And then it's okay. Great acting, spot on, but predictable writing hurt my soul. Well, they had to stay true to some story elements, and I'm kind of glad that they stayed true to this one. And now this is the scene. They're finally on the other side of that toppled building, and you can see just how much it was a 10-minute walk getting to that building down there at the end, because now we are on a clock. We're on a clock.
I don't know if that's poor writing, by the way. It might be cliche, but it's not poor. I mean, you either do it off screen or she gets bit on screen. Like, if she gets bit, she gets bit. I mean, what way do you avoid that? Just have her not get bit? And then there's no tension at all?
I mean, everybody knows except for Joel. Like that's kind of the point, you
Right.
know. Like her
And
demeanor
Ellie
changes.
doesn't know.
Yeah, Ellie doesn't know, right? But they don't. She's trying to hide it from them, but she's all right. Let's hurry up. Come on, let's go. Let's go. You know, like she's trying to get there quickly. Her whole demeanor changes. She's trying. So like even if you didn't know at that moment, you knew a couple minutes later when she was trying to hurry him up to like get to
Yeah.
the state building.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, you picked up on it solo because you're a nerd and you watch a ton of shit like this, but I don't know if your average viewer. I mean, it's this is where it sucks for us because we played the game, so we knew, period. But I'm sure there's a lot of people that didn't know.
I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there, if they come back and leave a comment below and catch us on the replay, that they didn't know until watching that episode. I feel like a good portion of viewers don't know.
Did your wife know, Jackson? Just curious. Yeah. Okay.
So then we find ourselves in what I feel like is going to be my favorite point of discussion tonight with Solo Wookiee is the truck outside of the state building. Because here we are, we finally made it, but then it looks like nothing's changed, like nothing's happened, and Solo Wookiee is going to start listing off a lot of things that that he had an issue with, that I feel like our characters are they were blinded by what was happening in front of them. Or you get to that goal line, you're right in front of the goal line, you're going to be blinded about what's happening around you to a degree.
I'm excited.
Shattered had no idea she was bit.
I'm excited to see what Solo has about this. I can be turned on this. I can be turned on this ending scene. I have a feeling, as far as my feelings on it. I really do.
I think it's going to be really interesting. We'll wait for Solo to make some of his comments here and start progressing. But that truck is a focal point, and we get to see that it's literally.
That's a good point, Solo. Already, he already nailed one.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's a battery in there. Just grab it.
Guess what in the truck? Battery, right? Like, it's got to be useful. It's got to be.
Yeah, but they're already there.
Yeah, right? I mean, they're sitting out there. Like, here's part of what I want to debate Solo Wookiee a little bit on this, about a battery being available. That was the kind of their goal line, and they're trying to drop Ellie off. So even if there was or was not a battery in there, they probably in their heads were thinking about coming back to that. But also, one of the things that I took note when watching the episode is, that's gonna be kind of hard to see. Here we go. That's the gas tank by Joel's chest there that is completely shot to shreds.
Yeah.
And this is probably like an air tank off the truck or something. That truck took a lot of damage in a firefight. And a lot of industrial trucks like that have the batteries down by the steps, down by where you get in and out of the truck on either this side or maybe the passenger side would have survived, but it incurred a lot of damage.
Now, Solo's continuing his crusade. The escape plan one, that is not, they're not getting back to that truck. Once what happens inside happens, they're not going out that door to go back to that truck. It's not happening.
No.
And at this point, like, Tess has a different mission. You know, once you saw that she got bit, or once she realized that she's on, like we said, she's on borrowed time now. She knows what's going to happen. So her mindset is, we need to get Ellie to these people. Like, she's not worried about getting to find Joel's brother. She's not worried about finding the battery for anything. She's not worried about getting paid for doing the mission anymore. She has a whole different mindset now. And you see that just ahead here, but like, she's not thinking about that at all.
No, I mean, there's a couple of other little clips that we can show that we'll get into, but we can leave this one up for a bit while we talk about this. Very good job on this set. Excellent job on this set with that cylindrical style room with the pillars getting in there. And it's in the game, it's very different. Fedra is chasing you guys and the Fireflies, so you've got that element, and now they did a really good job explaining what happened to the Fireflies here and why they're all dead. And it was simply one got infected, the good tried, and then it infected others, and then the good tried to defeat the infected, and then they all took each other out. And that's actually a really good diversion from the game without introducing Fedra into this portion of it, the show.
Yeah, they changed it to like, it's the enemy is the infected, and they're just making the infected a bigger and bigger enemy, and that makes Ellie all that much more important. And I mean the whole point of this is I mean, the game is the game, but like this is like the story is like Ellie's got to save the world, right? I mean, she's gonna find the cure, or they're gonna take her to get a cure, and
Yeah.
so to make her more important, like the Fedra people, like, do they really matter that much? I mean, the infected is the enemy, the infection is the enemy, and so we're building up like the enemy as stronger and more menacing, and you're getting more of that.
They want to lead with this as a horror show. So they did a body horror, creepy, gross episode.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I know we have our source material connections, but like everything that you needed was there.
Right.
Like, as far as the plot points, the whole thing with, Tess being bitten and her last scene with Joel, where she's basically just like, you need to still do this. And it's like, it's as much for him as it is for the world, because he's such a hopeless, miserable bastard that like this thing to hang on to, for him to have a goal like this in his life, could help him immeasurably, I think, is part of it, as far as her telling him that he needs to continue on. Right.
Yeah. And yeah, agreed.
I
like your point about your point about it, the truck being the Firefly's truck, and they didn't want to take it until they knew more about what's going on. But then here, Solo Wookiee had some things to point out. The 3 guns on the floor didn't pick any up, or the shells, food, water. You can't help the dead ones get gear and run. I don't disagree with digging through and grabbing some gear and running, but I don't think it adds much to the terror or the thriller side or the horror side of the show.
Right.
Well, remember, he's a smuggler. Smugglers have caches. They have storage areas. They're not necessarily always worried about having more of they're think like stealthy assassin Solo Wookiee. They're not on the front full of ammo and grenades and all this other stuff. They're trying to be in the shadows.
Well, he's also spending his remaining time in this room trying to cope with the fact that his girlfriend is dead and saying goodbye to her. That's what matters.
Exactly. And he's scared of her all of a sudden too, because like she walks towards him and he like jerks back and steps back, like, like it's a natural reaction to what he sees. So he's like, oh my God, this has been my partner the whole time. This is my girlfriend. And now all of a sudden no, this can't be true. But then it is true. And then again, he gets proven to that Ellie's bite is nothing. Like, the Ellie allegedly got bit in the museum as well, and her wound is still exactly the same. And Tess has been like an hour, and this has happened.
Yeah, this is exactly why they stuck with what they did stick with from the game, but also made some subtle changes. But why they hammered this home as hard as they do is it's reassuring, or it's really setting that belief in Joel that Ellie is, in fact, immune to this situation. And this puts it on the screen for viewers to see. Because now, remember when we talked about how important that 10-minute note was, that note of, hey, if this building that's toppled over wasn't here, it'd be just a 10-minute walk. We did the diversion. We get through the museum. Tess gets bit. And then once they're out of the museum, in theory, you're another 10 or 15-minute walk, maybe 20-minute walk, because they're a little bit further away. Less than half an hour. It's easy to say less than an hour based on the timing on what they say in the show. So you're an hour from getting bit, and she's already at this. The bites around the head, neck, and shoulders area was a 4 to 6 hour window, I think it was, or maybe 2 to 3 hour window before turning. So she's on a clock, and this is moving really fast. And then they look at Ellie's arm and nothing. So just reasserts or reaffirms or proves to Joel that she really is immune, and she really is bigger and more important than he ever imagined.
And also that it could be the biscuits in the first episode.
Good thing you didn't eat the biscuits, buddy.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it doesn't take that much time. That
Nope.
old lady would have been a zombie real fast if it was at the hospital, right?
Yeah, but I am if I can get to this. I'm with Solo a little bit about being upset at the waste of resources, so to speak.
Yeah, picking up a couple of grenades would have been good.
Oh yeah, there's crates and crates just sitting there. And those would be so useful in their position.
But we're focused on the characters.
I know.
That's what matters, right? I'm a big like character guy. Like all this stuff is all well and good, but like I was so touched by the goodbye scene with Joel and Tess and like him not saying anything. He didn't say I love you. He didn't really say goodbye. He just kind of like looked at her like frustrated that there's nothing he can do. And, you know, visibly upset. She knew how he felt and just tucked tail and ran.
Well, that was word for word on the video game. Save who you can save, right?
Right.
That was word for word right out of the video game, and they stuck right to it. And it was heart-wrenching. I get goosebumps just thinking about it again. And Joel, as we've talked about over the years of learning about Joel, he wears his emotions inside, not on his sleeve. He does not have any of his emotions on his sleeve. He holds everything inside. So for him to not react to Tess's goodbye is truthful to Joel, in my opinion. Hardcore.
This is pre-arc Joel. This is what the show is about.
Joel is a hard block of steel.
Right. Correct.
He's been that way for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And so like that's 100% on point for Joel.
Oh, dude, the end of this season is going to be so good. I'm not going to say anything, but God, I can't wait, dude. I really can't wait.
This is going to be good. And we could talk about that a little bit more as we close out on what our predictions are going forward, because it kind of seems like we're two episode stages. I'm kind of feeling like we'll see, because if we get, I'm not going to go too much further in it, but just the look of terror and fear on Tess's face. Anna does a fantastic job portraying fear, and she's just utterly defeated and ruined, because we're leading
so much trouble getting that lighter lit, and she's like struggling.
Yeah, and that's so a lot of people in the neckbeard forums on Reddit are upset about this, that she's supposed to be a badass and like, you know, go out guns blazing, but I didn't like, to me this is badass. Now this is where I like it, because it's body horror and it's creepy and it's gross and it's but at the same time it's like we can play games to say like, oh, maybe she didn't react because the fungus is taking her over, or motor skills weren't good, or whatever it was. But like, really, she just allows that thing to do that to her. I mean, imagine something coming up to you and doing that.
Right.
I don't know. I was disgusted.
Yeah, exactly. Could you even like consciously allow that to happen to you? I feel like you would never allow this to happen.
She's frozen.
Right.
It's fight or flight. It's that fight or flight mechanic in your brain, and that lighter, she's trying to get that. That's her fight mechanic. She's choosing fight instead of flight. And in the moment, a lot of people are like, why aren't you doing something about this? Well, she's done. She is effectively committing suicide by lighting that lighter and taking out everything else here. But what's interesting here is we talked about the hive mind, right? The reason why when they all burst through there and they all keep running after Joel and Ellie is she's infected and they can tell.
Yeah.
But I think they added this in screen to add validity and more depth to that hive mind aspect. Is this is the fungus's attempt at connecting to this rogue element. Think like Star Trek Borg. If I want to get super geeky about this is kind of like the Borg finding a lone or errant Borg unit, and they're reconnecting it to the hive mind. And this is where I kind of made that connection, where a lot of people said that this was trash to add this to the show. A lot of my friends out there in social media were contacting me. They're like, why did they go this route? And I'm like, I don't really love it, but I understand it. Like that hive mind connection, trying to draw this individual fungally infected person to the hive.
I like it from that aspect and it being disgusting, but I'm not buying that your instincts don't take over here and you don't like try to light the lighter away. Like I don't think a human being would ever allow that to happen to them. But again, does that matter? Maybe not. I thought I was totally like engrossed in it. So I'm sitting here like poking holes in it. But I do think that's a valid criticism of like believability. Like, I don't know if that's believable, but I thought it was fucking cool. So I've just been letting it slide.
I want to learn more. I think they're educating us a little bit more and more as we continue to go. And maybe there was something about the infection spreading to her at this point that paralyzed her to a degree. Because at the same time that's happening, her hands get the tremors. She's getting the tremors that they talk about in during the infection process. And that's when that lighter sparks.
That might be true, but like, your audience shouldn't have to create those things in their own heads. Like, we need to be told that that's the case. Like, we can't just assume that. That's an assumption we're making to justify the scene, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Like, nobody we have no reason to believe that based on what we saw in the show, besides like, oh, she's fucking terrified trying to light this lighter. It was so, again, though, I'm complaining, but it was gross. I was all for the I'm loving this. Just thinking it's the coolest thing ever. I love it. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. I love it.
I am so absolutely disgusted by it. I don't like it, but I can't not watch it. And I think that's part of, as much as we need an explanation for it, it's there for us to watch and be disgusted by.
Right. It's effective.
And so we're all talking about it the next day, and everybody's like, oh my God, that's the most disgusting thing, and yeah, of course, there's going to be plenty of people who complain about it, hate on it, whatever. But I mean, I'm a game fan more than anything, and I don't have an issue with it because I understand what it's doing. As much as I don't know why, it doesn't matter because it looked so gross, and I'm so disgusted by it, and I really want to know what my wife's reaction is going to be when she sees it.
It's very effective. Like, from the jump, when the doctor picks it up in her hands and it like moves around, it's like, oh God. And I even said to my wife, I'm like, this is adequately creepy. Like, this whole scene is very well done with the doctor's office or whatever. I am interested in both your takes though. Are you like, it sounds to me like this isn't bothering you, this whole like mouth fungus thing, like the differences. Am I right in that assumption, or does it bother you a bit that this has been added to the lore, I guess? Either one of you.
I mean, not, sorry, Andy, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm not bothered by it at all. I understand that changes had to be made to present us, give us a TV show, to get it on screen, to do different. And a game is one thing, and this is a different avenue, and I'm okay with how if Mushroom Zombie or not, I'm not kissing you anyway, Solo Wookie. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Oh, it is right. Yeah. That's so right. But I don't mind. I'm not upset with it. I'm okay with it because it creeps me out and it puts me on edge as much as the game did when I was playing it. So it's got that same type of feeling. So I like it and I'm okay with it.
I'm gonna get a little punny here and say I think it's growing on me.
Oh no, it's like it's a very different version. Like The Last of Us, the game doesn't really gross me out. So I enjoy that the show is giving me an element that the game didn't have, where it's like, this is disgusting.
Yeah.
It makes me really uncomfortable.
It's very violating. Like, being bitten is a violating thing, but then to have somebody stick something in your mouth is just disgusting. It's just like
having those things crawling through you, like the fungus growing inside of you. It's like something
crawly anything is just not okay for me. Like, anytime, no way.
No kink shaming. It's for the zombie pervs, which is hilarious because if you think about it, have you ever seen any of the movies, the romance or rom-coms out of the 80s, 90s, or 2000s where a girl walks up and touches a dude's lips and then starts rubbing the lips and then jams her fingers and it's like, it's violating and it's disgusting. So I will be very punny to say it's growing on me. My brain craves continuity, So a lot of times when I'm watching the show, I'm like, I wish this would have been a little bit more like the game in some portions and some aspects, as I want that familiarity as they continue to build this universe. But I'm not gonna lie, the first episode I didn't quite like it because I knew it wasn't hair. When you guys are like, oh, it's a mouthful of hair, I'm like, I don't think it's hair, and I'm not liking where this is going. But this with
It's not
Tess's
hair.
death scene,
I
that was violatingly disgusting, and I'm with you guys. Like this is growing on me more.
It's
You guys,
it's fantastic. I'm like, I'm such a sucker. I'm so desensitized to like gross shit that like when I see something like this in like mainstream media, it's just the balls on them. Because like you've got HBO, there's classy people that watch this television program. I told my mother to watch this. And she might have bailed. I don't know, but it's fantastic. By the way, the zombie perv thing, your comment reminded me, Warm Bodies. This is like the movie Warm Bodies. If you've never seen it, it's a zombie falling in love with a beautiful girl. It's a romance movie between a girl and a zombie. Very fun, very cute, worth watching. Honestly. It's
awesome.
Good.
I told my mom specifically not to watch the show.
I've been talking about it so much that I think my mom decided to watch it because she was even in the chat here earlier this evening and talking about made a couple of really cool points. She loves thriller movies and she is into horror movies, and so this is right up her alley. I know she's going to enjoy it if she keeps watching it. But so this kind of brings us to the last scene, and this was heartbreakingly heart-stopping, just filled me with a lot of dread.
What, the explosion or them going
scene,
to the next?
After the explosion, the scene, if you really look hard at Bella Ramsey, at Ellie's face, the look of desperation and it's like her world as she knew it at that moment's completely changed, and they've lost Tess. Even though she only knew Tess for a couple of days, the look on her face is like this is it. That's that feeling of dread and feeling of terror. Like nothing's gonna go right ever again, and this is gonna be like they're not gonna make it. Desperation, just that look of desperation on her face in that final scene, and Bella Ramsey embodies Ellie perfectly here with the long sleeves, the shrug of the shoulders, just the stance looks childlike.
Yeah, I like her. I've decided.
But she, like, you also see, like, right now, Tess just died and this just happened to her, and there's so much emotion. She like feels it. And Joel, like, who's known Tess, that's his girl, he's gone already.
Yep.
Like, he doesn't even, like, he has no feeling. So that's what they're kind of showing us here, like how much she's like she's feeling it. She needs to process, like, this woman just died, turned and died and killed herself to save us, and this dude doesn't even like acknowledge it.
And that was Joel's love interest up until that point, and he had spent a great deal of time with her in that 20-year span. I don't know where she came into play in Joel's life, but imagine if Joel spent a couple of years finding his way to Boston. He probably spent the better part of a decade with her, if not more.
Right. I mean, they were partners. Yeah. They worked together. Yeah.
Barely flinches after her sacrifice and pushes on. And here you are seeing Ellie just emotionally crushed and carrying the weight of everything that just happened. So they ended this on a perfect scene, in my opinion. That's just leaves me chomping for more next week.
Yep.
Last couple of comments. Haven't seen me in person. Yeah, we did clear that. The Warm Bodies is awesome. I'm gonna go look at it based on what you guys were saying. All those grenades and fuel, not a very big explosion, but I can tell you that due to how that building is built, just kind of had to chuckle. Was expecting such a big boom, and it wasn't. I had this similar thought in my head. 110 to 120 gallons of cherry flavored diesel, that off-road diesel that was spilled over. We saw 2 barrels that we knew she knocked over. Who knows if there were more? Basically, all we saw was kind of the flash up of the fumes kind of taking over and the explosion from those fumes. And I think that's one thing that they could have done a little bit better. That's my one big critique on this, is somebody who's spent time in the military, is once that explosion kicks off and the fire starts, you should hear grenades popping off every second or two, because the time it takes for the heat to warm up the Comp B and everything else, and then they would pop off, and you should hear ammunition popping off. You've ever heard of or ever seen or heard of a fireworks factory going off when it's on fire and it explodes. There's fireworks constantly popping off continuously. That's how it should have played out here. And I'm with Solo Wookie on that. Was if they really did have a fair bit of supplies there, it should have been cooking off for a bit longer yet as they were closing out. But I can also see that from the storytelling standpoint, they wanted to get to this image, and show the emotional baggage that Ellie, the weight of the what just happened to Ellie, and then cut the scene there too. Because if they made it completely realistic, it wouldn't play it off well on the screen. Is my thought. She had her switchblade again, never picked it up at the end of the first episode.
Yeah,
Could be continuity error.
She was playing with it in this episode, though, in the hallway of the hotel, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but I mean, to Solo's point, maybe they screwed up and they just didn't cut in the scene.
I thought she grabbed it while she was going with Joel. Like you saw her like reach for it real quick.
I thought I saw her bend over and grab it while she was ducking out with them. I'd have to go back and look, though.
I mean, I hope he's wrong, but even if he's not, it's just like a continuity error.
So did you guys continue watching the trailer for next week's episode?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's some more changes coming, right? Like they've already kind of spoiled how Bill and Joel and Ellie meet. And I'm kind of assuming we haven't seen everything on screen there, but that pit trap that he has, right?
Oh my God, I'm excited for that.
I'm excited for that too, but I'm a little nervous because of how nitty gritty and guerrilla warfare like that refrigerator trap was from the game. That really sold Bill's insanity to me, and how he. I'm a little concerned going into this episode because of how well the game sets up Bill's insanity with those traps and with the city layout. And all I'm seeing is when we bring up Bill and Frank in these clips that we're seeing, I see peaceful pastures and I see gates and I see vehicle fences and I see.
Those are flashbacks, though.
Are they flashbacks?
It seems to be flat. I mean, there's a scene where he's basically saying like they're gonna come for you, and then they show Frank saying to Bill or vice versa, like, "Hey, call Joel, sound the alarm." And I'm assuming that's the '80s music that we heard at the end of the first episode. So they're setting up the attack that is going to happen on them, and that's when we're going to get this Fedra element, I think, added.
So you think it's people? Think it's Fedra that it was attacking Bill?
Maybe not Fedra, but like, crews of marauders or whatever. Like, So I think that we saw in that trailer, I think it was a mix of flashback scenes and stuff currently happening.
Yeah, I'm going to be sad too if there's no fridge trap, but I'm really excited to see Nick Offerman on screen as Bill.
Me too.
I'm really looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to seeing them deep dive a little bit more into Frank, because I felt that was a character that should have been in the game. Frank should have been in the game.
I'm going to make the assumption that Frank is everything we see of Frank is going to be a flashback. That's my guess.
Ooh, that's a fair guess. I didn't even think about that.
I don't think Frank is still around.
I think we get back, a lot of backstory.
Okay. That's fair. I'm going to try not to feed into it too much and spin and get too crazy wild with it. I think what I am going to do is I'm going to practice a little social media separation a bit so that I don't get too wound up. And I think the only discussion I'll have is with you guys, and I'll share some behind the scenes stuff, whatever I find that might be relevant to next week's episode. But I really like the idea of us, when we finish this episode on Monday nights, is we kind of cut tail it and then revisit on Sunday and Monday.
Yep.
I'm kind of liking that. But I can't thank you guys enough. Another fantastic Monday night hanging out with you guys, talking about The Last of Us. I'm really excited that we've got at least 7 more episodes for this, and maybe a wrap up one after that. But we are way over on time. You're trying to keep this to an hour, but we're having so much digging into this. As we wrap this up, guys, where can people find you? What do you guys have going on next? What's your social media handles?
You can find me Bored and Annoyed on Spotify, all the iTunes, all the podcast stuff. It's all older episodes, but you can reach out to me at Bored and at Bored Annoyed, no and on Instagram. If you have any questions about my opinions on a recent movie. By the way, movie recommendation from last year. Since we're talking grody shit, Bones and All. Watch Bones and All. That's my recommendation to you all. Yeah, you two definitely should watch it. It's really good.
Bones and All. Definitely check that out.
Yeah. Cannibalism. It's fun.
Oof, wow.
Awesome.
It's a cannibalistic romance.
Wait, this is getting deep and gritty.
It's really, dude, if it wasn't about
Okay.
cannibalism, it's like best picture bait, like Oscar worthy material, in my opinion.
Oh boy. So everybody, all the 15 people watching live still right now, make sure you check that out on Jackson's recommendation. And don't forget to hit the like and the thumbs up and hit the subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on next week. But Double O, brother, man, what do you got coming up?
You can catch me on Wednesday nights, 9:15 on the Renovision channel. We do the totally awesome, coolest show ever. We've started doing some comic reviews and some other tier lists and such. I think we're doing something with some Golden Age comics this week on the tier list. So yeah, I'll be there at 9:15, and yeah, otherwise I'll be back here next Monday to talk to you more about some Last of Us.
I can't wait. And the two gentlemen that I owe this fandom to right here, C. Woodard 19 and Drew Manchu, the Modern Men, when we were doing the Modern Men show on the Comic Core, they both spoke to, hey, have you read The Last of Us? Have you played the video game? You really should. And this was 4 years ago, I think. Maybe 3 years ago. And this is what started me on my Last of Us fandom and journey. So I have C. Woodard and Drew Manchu to thank you. Thank you guys so much. This has been an absolutely phenomenal ride with The Last of Us. Everybody hit that thumbs up. It helps out tremendously. We greatly appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you guys next week. And Jackson, you dropped a trailer last second. Do you want to take a peek on that, or is that for us?
That I dropped it for you, and I dropped it in the chat. Just everybody should go watch the trailer and decide if they want to watch that movie or not.
Okay, Bones and All. We're definitely going to check that out.
I'll try to have one of those every week during this. Just a random movie suggestion.
I'm looking forward to that, man. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate your guys' time. Thanks for letting us run over Jackson and Double O. Your guys' time is just as important as everybody in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Really quick, one more question. When are you going to be on again, Andy?
Oh, that's a good point. We are going to be on here at the ComicManAndy YouTube channel. Oh, it's a Wednesday night. So tomorrow night, Tuesday night, we'll be at Sibbleman's Comics over there doing the Comics News Weekly show. Some comic news, some comic information going on there. Wednesday, we'll be here doing the new comic book day hangout and discussion, half hour, 45 minutes or so. Thursday will probably be off, but Friday, I'm really excited for Friday because I have some questions and I want to know, is CGC cutting corners? Is CGC Grading Comics cutting corners? Because to get a modern comic submission that's not even fast tracked back in only 3 days, we're going to be talking about that. And we're going to be unboxing that box that's sitting right here. I'm excited. I'm going into it blind. But for a modern submission to be done in 3 days, I've got a lot of questions. So we're going to hopefully get a lot of the community in here to talk about this. Just find out what's going on. But man, what an epic night. Thank you, everybody, so much. Thank you, Double O, for the interjection because I almost completely forgot. But you guys know how we're going to do this, right? Everybody in the chat that's been around here. Feels like a lifetime ago. It does, C. Woodard. It's going to be a fun one, though. You guys know how I'm going to do this. I'm going to go peace out. I'm going to go pinkies out. I'm going to catch y'all on the flip side for the next one. And remember, the most important part all day, every day, stay original and take care of each other because we're all we got, right? Like, this isn't The Last of Us.
Don't eat biscuits.
Don't eat biscuits.
Be excellent to each other. And party on, dudes.